I'm Christian Henson. I'm one of the directors of Spitfire Audio, and I've also have a day job as a TV and film composer.
Hi, I'm Paul Thompson. I'm also a director of Spitfire Audio. I write music for film, TV. We both actually do video games as well.
We do, yes, yes.
So please tell us about the genesis of Spitfire Audio.
Historically, I have a very bad way of telling our story. So do you want to start?
Okay. Christian and I were talking one day about the very poor state of chamber string samples. We were both writing something for a smaller string group, and we actually conceived of the idea of putting Spitfire together over a pint of warm flat beer in a pub in central London, and decided to get our credit cards out and get some overtime in the studio at Air, where we recorded a very small violin 2 section as a kind of test. We spent a couple of weeks editing that and putting it together, and then shared it with some friends. Christian had done quite a lot of work for Harry Gregson Williams, and he was so excited about the sounds that we'd created that he immediately started using them in the Narnia film.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So it kind of went from there, and it snowballed to the extent that we managed to get through the chamber strings process and gathered a few more composers together to kind of help us fund it. And then almost as soon as we'd finished that, John Powell said, "Okay guys, when are you doing the big string sections?" And then we managed to get the end of that, and he said, "Okay, brass next." And so it became this project, slightly out of control project that consumed our lives for a couple of years. From that, we decided we wanted to put together a percussion library. And this initially was a straightforward orchestral percussion, very basic orchestral percussion library. But we thought that it probably wouldn't necessarily work with just a small group of composers that we had. So we decided to make it a commercial product, and that was really the birth of the commercial part of Spitfire Audio.
The key thing with Spitfire is that we just felt the way other people were making samples was that they were making samples, they were approaching it from a software development point of view, and we didn't see the point of that. We just said, let's just make them exactly the same way as we do with our film scores, and we look to engineering into it what makes film scores kind of quite magical. And it's from the, I know a lot of our tech team will have talked about the signal path and the musicians and the room and all that kind of stuff, but that's essentially what's different about Spitfire. That was the genesis of the idea.
We tried to engineer a kind of element of chaos into the thing. We tried to make the recording samples can be extremely hard and tiring for musicians. Just the physicality, for example, of holding a contrabass trombone up for a couple of hours. Yeah. So we try to make the sessions fun, and I think we succeed on the whole.
Well, by paying a lot of money,
yes,
and paying them royalties, I think does help definitely.
Yeah.
I think the key thing is that a misconception about sample libraries is that they put musicians out of work, and it couldn't be further from the truth. I personally have written 35 film scores, done about 80 TV shows, and a large part of that work is orchestral. I do not read music. I've never studied orchestration or arrangement. I didn't go to university to study these things. The only way I'd be able to employ these musicians is by using these virtual instruments to work out for myself what it's going to sound like and to demonstrate that to my client. So that was a key kind of thing that we had to educate the musicians about in this country, and they now see it as a legitimate kind of revenue stream for the industry. We've currently got, I think, around 20 projects that we've done for the commercial range in Spitfire, but it's growing quite rapidly because we feel that there's an opportunity to really change people's attitudes towards sampling and how they're used. Where we record our samples is where this fantastic composer called Hans Zimmer, who's incredibly successful, very famous, it's where he works, and it's where Hans has actually done a lot of sampling himself. And Hans Zimmer is I believe, the chap who invented orchestral sampling back in the days of Roland.
Yeah.
Roland, what they're called?
Yeah. The S760, I think
Yeah,
it was.
racks and racks.
Racks of them, and then the EMU E4s. I remember seeing Hans's studio in the late 90s, and it was just astonishing how many of these samplers he had, probably 70 or 80 of the E4s. But he's a incredible enthusiast about technology, and to some extent, kind of, as far as I can see, he kind of lives on the cutting edge. He loves to really have the very latest technology available to him, and finds it exciting and interesting to. I think he finds it inspiring to have all that stuff around him while he's actually writing.
Yeah.
It's part of his work.
I think there's a kindred spirit there. That I think that we feel, because when I work as a composer, I'm so proud that every single sound that I hear is something I've been involved in making. I think there's something very exciting about that. So we've had a few chats with Hans. We went over and visited him last year, because naturally there's we're doing very similar things to him in Air, and I got a phone call just before Christmas, and Hans expressed an interest in doing a percussion library, with Spitfire being a natural partner, because we already work at Air Studios, and I think that we have similar, but not the same, but a similar kind of approach, certainly enthusiasm for sampling and what it does for our work, for the industry, for the musicians, for the studios. So we were delighted when he, and the enthusiasm was instant, because he said, "Do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Yeah," and Hans said, "Announce it now." And so I didn't even speak to Paul. I didn't even clear it with him. It just went straight up on the internet, and that enthusiasm is, we've got 4 of the greatest percussionists in the country, if not the world, working downstairs at the moment, and that enthusiasm filters through everyone in the team and to the chaps downstairs.
And even on the production side, it's very exciting for me personally. Some of the people who are involved on the production side of the library are literally people that I grew up as a teenager looking at album covers and going, "Wow, this is one of my heroes." Mm-hmm. So it's very exciting to be working on this project.
And it goes back to also, I think what Hans said to me totally ties in with our ambitions with Spitfire. We don't try and make things sound. How do you get a sound to sound like those films? We simply do it the same way, so it sounds like those films. It's recorded in the same room by the same musicians using the same musical instruments. And I don't think there's any other sample libraries who can kind of claim that. And this is what Hans said. I feel a lot of people are trying to do what I do. A lot of people are trying to get that sound. So Hans has gone, "This is the sound. This is how you do it. This is not an imitation. This is the real deal." And that's what's so exciting, that there's clearly kind of quite a generosity in Hans to kind of go, "Stop trying it that way. This is how it's done." And it's been very interesting for us, because there are some differences between how Spitfire record products and how Hans approaches it.
Do you feel that it's a kind of creative relationship you have with Hans, or does he dictate the process?
It's a creative relationship, because we have a connection with the people who are going to use this stuff. So Hans has basically gone, "This is the way I do it. This is the way I want to do it." And our thing is, well, this is the way that we can make it into a commercial product. One very simple difference would be, we try to engineer chaos into recording a drum. So we would get them to hit with their left hand, then their right hand, then their left hand. And Hans is, "No, I want them to hit with their best hand, the best point in the drum every single time." And it lends to a different sounding kind of thing, but a very exciting one nevertheless.
So this would be a good point to maybe introduce. You can introduce who's actually downstairs, who you're working with.
Sure. I think I've been hogging a bit, and I don't know the name of the guys downstairs.
Okay. So at the moment downstairs, Jeff Foster is recording, sitting behind the desk for us, and Paul Clarvis is our lead percussionist. We've got 4 incredible percussionists downstairs.
They play in the Olympics.
They played in the Olympics, yes.
Yeah, in the opening ceremony.
Yeah.
Paul was actually the drum chief, wasn't he?
I think he was, yeah. They've got an incredible array of stuff down there. There's some amazing instruments down there. Jeff has set up, we had a very interesting discussion that was going backwards and forwards between us, Hans, Jeff, Alan, who's mixes a lot of stuff for Hans over in LA. And so we've got 96 microphones set up downstairs, and I think it's probably 96 because there are only 96 channels on the desk. I don't think you can actually get any more mics into the session. So it's a full. We've got 2 Pro Tools rigs running. We've got different converters so that we can pick the absolute best sound between the converters. And it's pretty full on down there at the moment.
Yeah, it is. It is. There's some pretty interesting spreadsheets, because for something on this scale, just content management is a crucial thing here. There are, I think, every 10 minutes they're taking about 200 gig of information. So it's absolutely nuts.
We've filled about 22 terabyte hard drives so far. So
after this session at Air, what's the next phase of this project?
Well, we thought it was going to finish, and we were going to distribute the content recorded here to the different mix engineers, of which there are 4 mixing this, aren't there?
4, yeah.
4, yeah. But Hans is working on a project called Lone Ranger at the moment, and he's working with a particular percussionist on that project, and he got in contact with us last night and said, guys, how about we get Jason Bonham on the Newman stage in LA and get him to hit some drums for us for this library as well. And we said, that sounds like a good idea, Hans, and the email literally 5 minutes later was, Jason's up for it. So the next step is off to LA to record Jason.
So once that's done, you've got all this data. What's going to happen then?
Okay, so the process now is when all of the recordings, Stan, who's our chief technical engineer here, he's compiling and editing down all of the recordings so they're in a format that all of our producers can understand. That stuff all goes over. We have duplicates over here and then duplicates with Hans's team over in LA. They're prepping stuff for the producers that are based over at Remote Control. And then everyone
start developing a horrible nosebleed.
And then at that point, everybody will take the source material, but they'll put their own twist on it. So, for example, Steve Lipson is going to have a very different sound to Junkie XL. We've got Alan Meyerson is going to have a very different sound to Jeff Foster, and of course, Hans has his own sound as well. The material will be they're recording back into the sessions their own versions of things, their own mixes, 5.1s. Then all of that material gets compiled from the UK and from LA. The team at Remote Control then edit that down into individual samples. It comes back over here where we do the noise reduction, and then we'll be building that into the libraries and beta testing them and putting the front panels on and all that kind of programming.
Why 4 mixes? Or why 4 different mixes?
Because that's Hans. Yeah, I, as I say, you know, that's what's been so brilliant about kind of collaborating with Hans on and working with Hans on this is he shares our enthusiasm, and it is I hope I'm fair to say this to Hans and it doesn't upset him, but it is a train set, and I think something that I think that we do and Hans does is we're very much in awe of the talent of what we're at a stage in our career that we can work with these amazingly talented people. And I think what Hans wants to demonstrate here is how important mix engineers are, because it will sound totally different. And I don't know how many Grammys we've got assembled on this project, but it's pretty. And you know, Hans is in awe of these people, as are we. Is in awe of the percussionists, the noise that they make, and the fact that we call this a job.
Hans suggested that we got everybody's Grammys together, melted them down into a giant Grammy anvil, and then recorded that in the hall downstairs.
And I think he was serious.
So once this project's wrapped up, what's next for Spitfire?
Well, I think that we've started a big project called BML, which is British Modular Library, which is just a means of deep sampling the entire orchestral range, but distribute it in a way that doesn't exclude people from dipping into it and grabbing what they need. But I would say that the thinking behind that is we want to encourage people to write better music for musicians to play, and I think that that's by doing by really showcasing British musicianship, and I think that something up to now that Samples have done, they've done big very well, and we're kind of concentrating on small, on beautiful, on detail, and I think with that it encourages more interesting composition, contrapuntal writing. So that is that's the road ahead for us, is to continue. We're very proud to have a credit on Avatar, and we met up with James Horner, who is, I believe, a fan of Spitfire and what we do, and there was we had lunch with him, and there was this kind of uncomfortable pause, and he looked straight at me and went, "You're going to be doing this for the rest of your life." And he's right. It's like the minute we started, we set ourselves off on a journey that I don't think we'll ever finish.
So you don't see it in any way kind of taking something away from musicians?
No, I really, as Hans has said often, that when he started doing the orchestral sampling and then recording orchestral music, at the beginning of his career, orchestral music was considered to be very old-fashioned. I think it's difficult to remember that point in time. But he made orchestras cool again. And as I say, we are catering to people who haven't studied music, who I think that what sampling enables people to, it breaks down the wall of music theory and having to study that in order to write orchestral music and work with musicians. And I think that it simply promotes live musicianship. I truly believe that. There are also some really romantic aspects, surprising to our experience. One was that we happened to work with a legend who agreed to allow us to sample him for a while, and it's made a beautiful instrument, and he has since tragically passed away. He is still performing on compositions that were written after his death, and I think that's quite, there's a kind of a shocking romance in that. I sampled my brother when he was 12. I've got a brother who's a lot younger than me, now 22, 23. I sampled him before his voice broke when he was 12, and did a little choral patch, and he's now a recording artist, and we've suggested that he does a duet with himself before his voice broke. I mean, that is time travel, and it's a very surprising kind of byproduct of our kind of experience.
Looking at the timeline of film music, it's interesting that there have kind of been two renaissances. The first one in the late 70s with Star Wars was John Williams essentially reinvigorating orchestral music for film and bringing it back into fashion. But then it died away again during the 80s, and you had a lot of synth scores and a lot of sample...
Do you remember those James
Sorry,
Bond
not synth scores.
Yeah, well, those James Bond movies, there's a couple of James Bond ones. It's Eric Serra did one, didn't it? It was all Kurzweil, wasn't it?
Yeah. So you had a lot of synths being used in the 80s, and that was great. And then suddenly Hans kind of reinvented orchestral music again. So it was the second renaissance of orchestral music in film. Ultimately, at the root of all of this, and the thing that started it and the thing that kind of continues it really still, is that we like to make toys for ourselves. And so part of the excitement of doing this is when you actually get the thing assembled and you can start playing and writing music with it, is an incredibly exciting and thrilling moment. And I think that's part of the, we're hoping that we can change in some ways the way that people write music, but also that the instruments that we're creating will help people to connect with the players. We like to, people know who our players are. They're always named in our literature, and you can see who's played what on our website. And so we found, certainly some of our players have also found that their bookings have increased after, it's a very mutually rewarding situation we found, and it's partly because of the huge amount of respect that we hold the musicians in. A year and a half ago, we decided to set up a Christmas campaign to try and raise some money for UNICEF, and one of the things that we decided to do was kind of pick 4 instruments from our own private little sample collections, things that we put together that aren't very complicated or very detailed but have a magical sound about them. And so we put that together, and we were kind of shocked and surprised by how popular it became. But it was based on a minimum donation of £2 per instrument, but everything goes through the Just Giving website, and then people are redirected to our site. So you can always log on to the Just Giving website and see how much money is being raised. And I think at the moment we're the fourth largest.
Fourth or fifth largest
donor
donor to UNICEF, which we're very proud of.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, it helps with this kind of the surprising side aspect of Spitfire has been this sense of community, and we've made a lot of friends, and I think this is yet another kind of way that kind of gets everyone in and kind of talking and working and sharing their experiences of composing. Great.
Cool.
Thanks,
Cool.
guys.
Thank you.